Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome everyone to a milestone episode of the History AI podcast, episode 200. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Today, we're diving into the life of a man who was not just one of America's founding fathers, but also a pioneering scientist and a legendary wit, Benjamin Franklin.
That's right, Marco. Franklin's story isn't just about politics, it's about innovation, resilience, and brilliance. But before we get into all that, remember, if you enjoy our journey through history, please rate us on your favorite podcast platform and drop a review. It really helps us out.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check out our newly launched merchandise. The link is in the show notes. Now, let's light up this episode with some insights into Franklin's early years.
Born on January 17, 1706, in a modest house on Milk Street, Boston, Benjamin Franklin was the 15th of 17 children born to Josiah Franklin and his wife Abia Folger. Sounds a lot like Dad's side of the family, right, Marco?
It must have been incredibly bustling, Chuck. With siblings all around, Ben was part of a blended family since Josiah had children from a previous marriage as well. This big family relied on the candle-making and soap-making business that Josiah ran.
Exactly. Despite the crowded household, Franklin showed early signs of curiosity and intellect. He attended the Boston Latin School but had to drop out at the age of 10 to help his father. Education didn't stop there for Ben, though.
Right, Chuck. Ben was a voracious reader, which laid the foundation for his self-education. He would spend countless hours reading books from his father's small collection and any others he could borrow or afford.
His reading eventually led him to his brother James, who owned a printing shop. At the tender age of 12, Ben became an apprentice to James, which was no easy ride. This was where he first got his hands dirty in the printing and publishing business, sparking his lifelong interest.
That apprenticeship was pivotal. It wasn't just about printing. Ben also wrote pieces under the pseudonym Mrs. Silence Dogood. These essays were so cleverly composed that they were widely celebrated, without anyone knowing the true identity of the writer.
But, like many young talents, Franklin clashed with his brother. This tension over creative control and the harsh treatment he received as an apprentice led him to make a life-changing decision: to leave Boston behind.
And that decision, as we'll see, sets him on a path to Philadelphia, where his story really begins to take off. But his early years in Boston were critical in shaping the curious, driven young man who would one day become a pivotal figure in American history.
After his bold departure from Boston in 1723, at the age of 17, Benjamin Franklin arrived in Philadelphia virtually penniless, famously clutching only a few loaves of bread. His arrival was nothing short of a young adventurer stepping into a new world, wasn't it, Marco?
Absolutely, Chuck. Franklin's first steps in Philadelphia could have come from a novel. He was disheveled, hungry, and tired but filled with ambition. He quickly found work as a printer, but not before he briefly worked at several odd jobs, including helping at a local merchant's shop.
Right, and his break came when he secured a position at Samuel Keimer's printing shop. Franklin's skill and diligence quickly made him indispensable. He was not just a pressman but also engaged in typesetting, sales, and even deliveries, learning every facet of the printing trade.
That industrious spirit caught the attention of Pennsylvania's governor, Sir William Keith, who took a peculiar interest in Franklin. Keith promised to set him up in business. Encouraged by this, Franklin ambitiously sought to further his skills and connections.
So, with promises of support from Keith, Franklin ventured to London in 1724 to procure printing equipment. However, he found himself stranded when Keith's promises turned out to be empty. Franklin was left to fend for himself in a foreign city.
But ever resourceful, he didn't just survive in London, he thrived. Franklin found work at Palmer's, a well-known printing house, where he honed his craft further and immersed himself in the intellectual circles of London, absorbing political and philosophical ideas that would later influence his writings and ideologies.
Exactly, Marco. After 18 months in London, Franklin returned to Philadelphia in 1726, equipped not only with advanced printing skills but also with new ideas about the world and his place in it. His time in London had transformed him from a fledgling apprentice into a confident young tradesman.
Back in Philadelphia, Franklin quickly rejoined Keimer's print shop. But now he was more than just an employee, he was a force of innovation and efficiency, bringing new ideas to the business and setting the stage for his eventual takeover of the printing house.
And during this period, Franklin's love for swimming also became well known. He was an avid swimmer, often seen demonstrating his swimming skills in the Delaware River. His prowess was so notable that it even caught the attention of a local school headmaster who suggested Franklin open a swimming school.
Indeed, Chuck. Franklin's swimming not only showcased his physical vigor but also reflected his lifelong love for learning and teaching. This physical activity was a great escape for him and a way to balance his intense intellectual pursuits.
His early career set a solid foundation for his later achievements. These formative years were crucial in shaping the ambitious young printer into a future founding father, scientist, and diplomat. Franklin's diverse talents and interests, from printing to swimming, underscored his multifaceted character. Upon returning to Philadelphia from London in 1726, Benjamin Franklin was not just older and wiser, but also brimming with ambition and ideas. He quickly resumed work with Samuel Keimer, but it wasn't long before Franklin's aspirations pushed him toward independence.
That's right, Chuck. Franklin's return marked a transformative period. His experience in London had broadened his perspective, making him keen to advance his own business. Within a year, through shrewd negotiation and leveraging his improved skills, Franklin took over the failing printing house of his former employer, Keimer.
This move was strategic. By 1728, Franklin had set up his own printing shop in partnership with Hugh Meredith, a fellow printer. This venture was bolstered by Franklin's relentless energy and his knack for business. He introduced new business practices and printing techniques that he had picked up in London, which really set his shop apart from the competition.
And it was during this period that Franklin began to cement his place not only as a businessman but also as a pillar of the Philadelphia community. In 1729, Franklin took another bold step by purchasing the Pennsylvania Gazette. This wasn't just any newspaper. Under Franklin's leadership, it became one of the most influential publications in the colonies.
Franklin's Gazette was more than a newspaper, it was a vehicle for societal commentary and advocacy. He used it to shape public opinion, advocate for civic improvements, and even poke fun at the cultural and political absurdities of the day. His witty and insightful writing quickly garnered a significant readership.
His influence in the city wasn't confined to print. Franklin was deeply involved in the civic life of Philadelphia. He organized the Junto, a group of like-minded individuals interested in improving themselves and their community, which later led to the establishment of the Library Company of Philadelphia in 1731.
It's incredible how he intertwined his business and civic interests. But Franklin's personal life was also evolving. In 1730, he formally acknowledged a son, William, born out of wedlock. This was a pivotal moment, as Franklin took full responsibility for William, raising him as his own and later taking him as an apprentice in his print shop.
William's birth in 1730 marked a new chapter in Franklin's life, showing a more personal side of the public figure. Despite the societal norms of the time, Franklin's openness about his son's paternity was notably unconventional and spoke volumes about his character.
Absolutely, Marco. From his advancements in printing to his roles as a community leader and a father, the period between 1726 and 1730 was crucial for Franklin. It laid the foundation for his future achievements and solidified his reputation as a man of both intellect and principle in the burgeoning city of Philadelphia. As we move into the 1730s, Benjamin Franklin's influence in Philadelphia was expanding well beyond the confines of his printing business. By this time, he was deeply embedded in the civic and cultural fabric of the city, wasn't he, Marco?
Absolutely, Chuck. In 1731, Franklin founded the Library Company of Philadelphia, which was more than just the first lending library in America. It was a hub for community learning and a beacon for promoting literacy and education among the public.
This was a game-changer, Marco. The Library Company allowed individuals who couldn't afford their own books access to a wealth of knowledge. It was a subscription library funded by its members, which reflected Franklin's ethos, education for the many, not just the few.
And his civic engagement didn't stop there. In 1736, Franklin took a leading role in organizing Pennsylvania's first firefighting company, the Union Fire Company. This wasn't just about fighting fires, it was about community resilience and preparedness, setting a model that would eventually be replicated throughout the city and beyond.
Franklin's vision for a safer community also led him to propose the creation of a city watch and street lighting. His proposal for street lighting was particularly innovative. By 1757, many of Philadelphia's dark streets were lit at night, improving safety and the quality of night life. Franklin's detailed plan included how the lamps were to be arranged and maintained, showing his meticulous attention to practical details.
On top of these contributions, in 1743, he founded the American Philosophical Society, which was devoted to the harnessing of intellectual energy for practical benefits. The society brought together some of the most brilliant minds of the day to discuss scientific and philosophical ideas.
Franklin's knack for bringing people together to discuss and solve societal issues was truly ahead of his time. But his contributions weren't just in public safety and intellectual pursuits. He also looked at healthcare. In 1751, he co-founded the Pennsylvania Hospital, the first hospital in what would become the United States, to care for the sick, poor, and mentally ill.
That's right, Chuck. Franklin's role in establishing the hospital was pivotal. He used his skills in persuasion and his connections to raise funds for the hospital, which included matching grants that encouraged others to contribute.
It's fascinating to see how Franklin's contributions across different aspects of civic life interwove to form a tapestry of public service. His efforts in fire safety, public health, street lighting, and education not only improved life in Philadelphia but also set precedents for future generations.
Indeed, Chuck. Franklin's civic involvement between 1731 and 1748 laid foundational changes that would benefit the city and its people for centuries to come. His vision and initiative during this period are perfect examples of how he used his intellect and influence to make a real, lasting impact on society.
By 1748, Benjamin Franklin had retired from the day-to-day operations of his printing business, shifting his boundless curiosity and energy towards the realm of science. This next decade, Marco, would cement his reputation as a pioneering scientist.
Absolutely, Chuck. Franklin's foray into science was marked by his curiosity about electricity, a relatively new and mysterious phenomenon at the time. His experiments and the resulting theories would fundamentally change our understanding of electrical science.
One of Franklin's most famous contributions was his work on the lightning rod. After extensive experimentation with electricity, Franklin proposed that lightning was a form of electrical discharge. He then invented the lightning rod in 1752, attaching a metal rod to the top of a building and connecting it to the ground with a wire. His invention proved crucial in protecting buildings from the destructive forces of lightning, saving countless structures and lives over the centuries.
And speaking of electricity, let's not skip over the iconic kite experiment. In this experiment, it was actually Franklin's son William who held the kite in a thunderstorm. Franklin used this setup to demonstrate that lightning and electricity were the same. Now, Chuck, you might say Franklin knew how to conduct a shocking experiment, but he also knew not to steal his son's thunder.
Right, and beyond his work with electricity, Franklin made significant contributions to other areas of science. In the early 1740s, he invented the Franklin stove, also known as the Pennsylvania fireplace. This new stove design was more efficient than traditional open fireplaces, using less wood and distributing heat more evenly throughout a room.
The Franklin stove was another example of Franklin's focus on practical solutions to everyday problems. He even refused to patent the design, believing that such improvements should be freely available to the public for their benefit, a true testament to his character.
Then there's his work with batteries. Franklin experimented with multiple linked capacitors in his electrical studies through what he called an electrical battery, which was actually a series of glass plates coated with lead that could store electrical charge. This early version of a battery paved the way for the development of more sophisticated electrical storage solutions. Franklin's insatiable curiosity often led him to some rather unexpected experiments. One of the more peculiar instances was when he decided to use his early battery to test the effects of electricity on chickens.
Yes, Chuck, Franklin was always pushing the boundaries of what was known about electricity. He actually attempted to use the electric charge stored in his glass plate battery to shock chickens. This wasn't done out of mere whimsy, though. He was exploring the medical potential of electric shocks, which he believed might have the power to revive the newly dead or paralyzed creatures temporarily.
It's a bit of a quirky footnote in his scientific career, but it shows just how broad Franklin's experimental zeal was, extending even to the farmyard. It makes you wonder if he was trying to invent the first electric chicken coop.
That's one electrifying poultry experiment, Chuck. Franklin's innovative spirit really knew no bounds, whether it was saving lives with the lightning rod or zapping chickens to better understand electricity's potential. And let's not forget his meteorological interests. Franklin was the first to map the Gulf Stream, noting its temperature and its role in aiding the shipping routes from America to Europe. His work in this area significantly improved the understanding of ocean currents and had practical implications for navigation and trade.
These years, from 1748 to 1757, show Franklin not just as a thinker but as a doer, someone who used scientific knowledge to create practical solutions. His contributions during this period were profound, impacting fields as diverse as meteorology, heating, public safety, and electrical science.
Indeed, Chuck. Franklin's blend of curiosity, practical intelligence, and a commitment to public good drove his scientific endeavors, making him one of the most influential scientists of his era. His work laid foundational stones in the edifice of American scientific achievement.
As Benjamin Franklin's scientific achievements were making waves, his political career was also gaining significant momentum. From 1757 to 1783, Franklin transformed from a local leader into a key figure in American politics, especially as tensions between the colonies and Britain intensified.
Right, Chuck. Franklin's political involvement took a serious turn when he was sent to England in 1757 as the Pennsylvania Assembly's representative. His initial role was to manage colonial affairs, but his perspective on the American-British relationship dramatically evolved during this time.
One of Franklin's major contributions was his involvement in the Albany Plan of Union in 1754. This was an early attempt to form a unified government for the 13 colonies. Although it was ultimately rejected by the colonies and the Crown, the plan laid the groundwork for the later concepts of federalism in the United States.
During his time in England, Franklin also made an audacious move in response to the Boston Tea Party in 1773. He offered to personally reimburse the British East India Company for the lost tea, using his own funds. This was a bold attempt to calm the escalating situation and possibly prevent further punitive measures from the British government.
However, Franklin's actions weren't always met with approval. Around the same time, he acquired a series of private letters written by Thomas Hutchinson, the governor of Massachusetts, which revealed Hutchinson's support for increasing royal authority in the colonies. Franklin leaked these letters to the public, hoping to expose the duplicity of the colonial administration. Instead, this act significantly backfired, increasing tensions and leading to Franklin being publicly humiliated at the Privy Council.
Franklin's stay in England stretched until the early 1770s, and during this time, he worked tirelessly to bridge the growing divide between the colonies and the British government. However, his efforts were often met with resistance, and the relationship continued to deteriorate.
As tensions escalated, Franklin's allegiance firmly shifted towards American interests. He returned to Philadelphia in 1775, just as the Revolutionary War was beginning to unfold. Almost immediately, he was elected to the Second Continental Congress and became one of the 5 men tasked with drafting the Declaration of Independence.
Franklin's diplomatic skills and international experience were invaluable in this role. His edits and contributions to the Declaration helped shape the final document, which of course, proclaimed the colony's independence from Britain in 1776.
But his political career wasn't without personal turmoil. His son, William Franklin, was the royal governor of New Jersey and remained a loyalist throughout the Revolution. This caused a deep and painful rift between father and son, as William was eventually imprisoned by the revolutionaries and later exiled to England.
Despite this personal heartache, Franklin's commitment to the American cause never wavered. His next major role was as an ambassador to France, where he worked to secure the French alliance, which proved crucial to the American victory in the Revolutionary War.
Franklin's charm and diplomatic acumen endeared him to the French court, leading to significant military and financial support for the fledgling American state. His efforts were instrumental in negotiating the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which officially ended the war and recognized American independence.
Indeed, Chuck. From drafting foundational documents to securing vital international alliances, Franklin's political career from 1757 to 1783 was marked by significant achievements that helped shape the nation. Despite the personal costs, his legacy in American politics remains profound.
After his work with the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Franklin's next major role took him across the Atlantic as America's ambassador to France in 1776. His mission? To secure French support for the American Revolutionary War, a task that would require all of his diplomatic cunning and charm.
And charm he did, Chuck. Franklin became something of a celebrity in France. His image as the quintessential American in rustic attire, complete with a fur hat, played well with the French, who saw him as an embodiment of the New World's Enlightenment ideals. His personality and intellectual prowess made him a favorite in the French courts and salons.
His efforts bore fruit in 1778 when he signed two crucial treaties, the Treaty of Amity and Commerce and the Treaty of Alliance. The first recognized the United States as an independent nation and promoted trade between France and America, while the second was a military alliance against Britain.
Franklin didn't just secure alliances, he was instrumental in obtaining vital financial and military aid from the French. This support was critical in sustaining the American forces during the Revolutionary War, ultimately contributing to the British defeat at Yorktown in 1781.
Interestingly, Franklin's influence extended beyond political and military realms. Poor Richard's Almanac, which he had been publishing since 1732 under the pseudonym Richard Saunders, became incredibly popular in France. The French loved its blend of humor, practical wisdom, and aphorisms. This publication significantly boosted Franklin's image and respect among the French people.
In fact, the French were so taken with Poor Richard's Almanac that in 1779 they named a warship in honor of this work. The ship, called the USS Bonhomme Richard, was a symbol of Franco-American friendship and cooperation. It famously engaged and defeated the British warship HMS Serapis during the Revolutionary War, which was a pivotal naval battle won under the command of John Paul Jones.
Beyond his diplomatic achievements, Franklin also engaged with leading French intellectuals and scientists, exchanging ideas that would influence his later works and thoughts. His tenure in France wasn't just a series of negotiations, it was a cultural exchange that enriched both Franklin and the transatlantic intellectual community.
After the war, Franklin played a key role in negotiating the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which formally ended the Revolutionary War and established borders for the new nation. His diplomatic acumen ensured favorable terms for the United States, marking another high point in his extensive career.
Returning to the United States in 1785, Franklin was not yet ready to retire. He was elected president of the Supreme Executive Council of Pennsylvania, effectively the state's governor, serving until 1788. His influence remained strong, and he was a vocal advocate for significant issues, including abolition and education.
At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, Franklin, the oldest delegate at 81, provided a unifying force. He advocated for the ratification of the U.S. Constitution, emphasizing compromise among the states to ensure the formation of a strong federal government.
Franklin's contributions to the Constitutional Convention included urging delegates to doubt a little of their own infallibility and to sign the Constitution for the good of the nation. It was a pivotal moment that helped to pave the way for the Constitution's adoption.
Franklin's final years were dedicated to more than just political endeavors. He continued to write extensively, contributing essays and thoughts on societal issues, and remained active in social causes until his death in 1790.
From securing critical foreign alliances to shaping the foundational documents of the United States, Franklin's later years were as impactful as any other period in his life. His work during these years helped to define the trajectory of the new nation and left a lasting legacy on both sides of the Atlantic. Benjamin Franklin passed away on April 17, 1790, in Philadelphia, leaving behind a legacy that remains profoundly influential to this day. His life and work span the realms of science, politics, and civic activism, shaping not only America but also the broader world.
Franklin's influence is visible in many facets of modern life. As a founding father, he helped lay the groundwork for the United States through his contributions to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. His diplomatic efforts in France were crucial in securing the support that led to American independence.
On the scientific front, Franklin's discoveries about electricity paved the way for future innovations that have dramatically shaped the modern world. His invention of the lightning rod and his studies on electricity have saved countless lives and buildings from destruction.
Franklin was also a visionary in civic engagement, founding institutions like the University of Pennsylvania, the American Philosophical Society, and the first public lending library. Each of these institutions continues to contribute to societal advancement even centuries later.
And let's not forget his moral and philosophical contributions. Franklin's push for abolition in the latter years of his life marked him as a progressive thinker ahead of his time. His writings, filled with wit and wisdom, continue to inspire and educate people around the world.
His death was mourned as the loss of a universal man, deeply admired and respected. He was someone who managed to touch every aspect of American life and beyond. His story is a call to action for all of us to engage with our communities and contribute to the betterment of society.
And as we reflect on the vast impact of Benjamin Franklin's life, we invite you, our listeners, to share his story in our podcast with others. By spreading the word, you help keep his legacy alive and inspire others to make a positive impact in the world.
So, if you've enjoyed this journey through Franklin's life, please share this episode with someone who would appreciate it. Subscribe to our podcast, rate us, and leave a review. Each share, each review, helps us bring these stories to more listeners and continue growing our community.
Remember, every episode is designed to be evergreen, timeless, just like the lessons from Franklin's life. So whether it's today or years from now, there's always something to learn and share from the History AI podcast.
Thank you for joining us for this special 200th episode. We're excited to continue exploring history with you and uncovering the stories that shaped our world.
Until next time, keep making history. Looking for the perfect way to show appreciation for the incredible mom in your life? Discover Exhausted Moms, a coloring journey to relaxation and humor, the coloring book that speaks directly to the heart of motherhood. Gift her an escape into pages of laughter, empowerment, and moments of tranquility. With Exhausted Moms, she'll find a blend of whimsical illustrations and inspiring quotes that celebrate her daily triumphs and challenges. Crafted with love from images I created for the mother of my children, each page offers a space for creativity and relaxation, a reminder that she's doing an amazing job, even on the toughest days. Give the gift of laughter, peace, and recognition. Exhausted Moms isn't just a coloring book, it's a hug, a nod of understanding, and a token of appreciation for everything she does. Surprise her with Exhausted Moms today and watch her face light up with joy. Because every mom deserves a moment to herself, wrapped in the colors of love and support.